I recently read Uncle Tom's Cabin, and I suggest that at our monthly book club we should meet to discuss this novel. I think that Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote a very controversial novel for her time that describes the life of a slave as being harsh, cruel, and sad. However, I believe that slavery as a whole was neither bad nor good, and as a result, I am very interested to hear what your viewpoints are on slavery. I suggest that we meet on the fourth Sunday of the month of December to discuss this matter. Sincerely, Charles Brooks.
Dear Charles Brooks and William Allen, sorry this letter is delayed. I had to wait until the Sabbath ended to respond to you both. I am delighted with the idea of reading Uncle Tom's Cabin, seeing as my colleagues in my community are in constant debate regarding the novel. Although I greatly dislike the idea of supporting blacks reading Harriet's writing, I am eager to see what a mess she has been able to create. Writing is a privilege that should be exclusive to white men. See you folks soon. Rafal. Dear Rafal and Charles Brooks, this is a wonderful idea. I think Miss Stowe has written a truly touching and heart-wrenching tale, accurate and realistic. In fact, I recently wrote a wonderful review for the novel. There's definitely much to discuss, and I look forward to the conversation it will undoubtedly provoke. See you in a week. William G. Allen.
Hello.
Hi, Rafal.
Hello.
William G. Allen. Good to see you again.
Charles Brooks.
See you. First, I would like to say that this book is quite simply preposterous. It clearly puts down slavery, shining no light on the necessities and help that American institution of slavery has provided. First, an American institution can be defined as a law, act, or idea established by the American people that reflects the established American ideals.
What ideals specifically are you talking about?
I think Allen means freedom of speech, press, the right to vote, and all other rights that come along with the Constitution.
Yes, exactly.
I would like to point out that slavery was not only an American institution. It is discussed in the Bible and has been a tradition since the beginning of time. Slavery was in America as it was used in Assyria, Egypt, and Babylon. For the purpose of wealth and ownership, slavery was instituted by esteemed and educated Americans as a practice through which the economy could be improved. Harriet Beecher Stowe has strategically left these aspects out of her book, creating a catalog of violence and misleading the reader with an incomplete account of the realities of slavery.
Well, I don't necessarily support or oppose slavery. I definitely view it as an American institution. So I agree with you, Rafal, in that sense.
Look, it is clear that slaves endured numerous hardships and had no personal freedom. This completely contradicts our constitutional values. Miss Stowe gives a wonderful detailed account of the hardships of slavery.
What I don't understand is that this Harriet lady seems like a lady of the Bible. She uses several religious quotes and references. Taking that into account, I don't understand why she doesn't see the clear indications that God supports slavery and its ideals.
I do think Miss Stowe depicts slavery in a very detailed and realistic light. But there are definitely aspects left out of the equation.
Yes, many aspects are left out. Such a wonderful quote here that she could have used in her novel. Over these heathen slaves, the owner's property were absolute. He could put them to hard labor to the utmost extent of their physical strength. He could inflict on them any degree of chastisement, short of injury, to life and limb. Quote completely shows the religious support for slavery, and it is mentioned in Leviticus chapter 25, verses 44 through 46.
Well, speaking of quotes, I just heard wonderful words by Abraham Lincoln. He stated, "As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy." Slavery is completely immoral. I just heard another quote by abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, who stated, "If we enslave the liberty of but one human being, then the liberties of the world are put in peril."
And you agree with these statements?
Yes, 100%. They're completely correct.
Very interesting.
Oh, I disagree completely. Slavery is not an issue of morality, but rather reality. It is fair and realistic for blacks to be held on a lower level. They are fundamentally inferior to whites. Recent scientific research by Richard Colfax has proven that it is stated the acknowledged meanness of the Negro's intellect can coincide with the shape of his head. All around, blacks are at the lower level than whites.
I think the motivations behind slavery are strongly related to the white belief that they are superior to African Americans. Whether that can be scientifically proven, that's definitely debatable.
Scientifically proven? What? There's no possible way that racism can be defined by science. It is clear that blacks are not weaker or physically any different than whites. Yes, they might be less intelligent, but that is only our own fault. Slave masters prevent blacks from being educated. That makes them so-called stupid. In a novel I recently read titled Benito Cereno by Melville, Babo, a black slave, is a brilliant and masterful character.
Oh, I too have read that novel, and no, the black is more similar to an evil villain, controlling and ceaselessly manipulative.
The idea of nature as a remedy is also reflected through the story. Captain Delano speaks to Benito and says that nature has the ability to promote progression and allow the forgetting of the past. It's time for us to move on, abolish slavery, and create a future different from that of our past. Captain Delano asks Benito, "What has cast such a shadow upon you?" And Benito responds, "The Negro." Racism has led to the destruction of Benito and to the death of him.
But in truth, without slavery, our world, our economy, would not thrive at the level it does today. The North depends on the profits made by the South. The South's production of those products depend on the slaves doing the physical labor.
Yes, exactly. The slaves who do the physical labor and get no pay or credit for their work, a perfect example of the corruption of the South.
I heard a convincing argument by John C. Calhoun in which he stated regarding a slave that slavery supports him in comfort and peace. It restrains his vices. It improves his mind, orals, and manners. It instructs him in Christian knowledge. Therefore, stating that slavery is just as beneficial to the slave as it is to the master.
Yes, and realistically, the slaves are better off here in America than they are in their previous homes of Africa, where they were subject to dangers and their safety was in constant jeopardy. Here in America, slaves had the protection and warmth of a Christian home and Christian and even Jewish masters to lead them on the correct path.
But who says they want that protection? They can just as easily protect themselves.
Well, slave masters are the only ones who know what's the best for the slave. It is only fair that they have the political voice within society. The masters speak for both themselves and the slaves, seeing that as the slave is in submission to their owner, the master has the right to speak for them.
Speaking of masters knowing what's best, what do you think of the Fugitive Slave Act?
I'll tell you what I think. It is unjust and unfair. In the words of transcendentalist Theodore Parker, the law is a hateful statute of kidnappers. Take, for example, the case of Dred Scott, a slave denied his freedom when he filed suit for emancipation. Dred should have been granted emancipation, no questions asked. In fact, every slave should be granted emancipation. The immediate abolition of slavery is desperately needed in our current times.
But then again, many argue that the gradual abolition of slavery is a smarter approach. That if we wait for the government to officially pass laws regarding slavery, our problems will be solved.
The only existent problem, in my opinion, is the ignorance of abolitionists who only stick to their own views and refuse to see the necessity of slavery.
Then there's the constant debate regarding the Corwin Amendment.
Ah, yes, the Corwin Amendment. If you ask me, it is complete rubbish, another attempt by the powerful Southern slaveholders to keep their slaves at any cost.
I think it is perfectly fair. What right does the government have to control personal business within a state? If a state has a law declaring slavery, the government does not deserve the right or power to overrule such a law.
But then what is the point of a national government if the state laws overrule the federal laws? In the case of the Corwin Amendment, I think Thomas Corwin had no right to propose a change to a federal law.
That's absurd. We live in a democratic country where the power lies within the people. Thomas Corwin has all the rights to attempt to change the federal law.
This brings up the issue of sovereignty, because a country should have certain morals that should not be violated. Slavery contradicts the morals of our country and threatens the sovereignty of America.
Now, onto another pressing matter that I think is very important in the book and in slavery as a whole. Paternalism, which is shown in Uncle Tom's Cabin through Tom and St. Clair's relationship. St. Clair buys Tom mainly because his younger daughter is very fond of him. Paternalism allows masters to treat their slaves well because when the slaves are free, they will learn how to live in society.
I think the ideals of paternalism are awful because first, slaves will never be considered family. They are meant to and are only part of our work lives. Also only considered 3/5 of a person, so treating them nice just gives them false hope.
I think paternalism is an important factor for the survival of slaves. Although I greatly oppose slavery, I think paternalism is the only good thing involved in the system. Paternalism is the closest thing we get to equality within slavery. I know that if we want to achieve true equality, slavery needs to be abolished because it is not an American institution. This is possible. Slavery would not have endured past Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation because a growing majority of Americans are realizing the conflicting ideals between slavery and the American Constitution.
Slavery would have endured long after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Humans are creatures of habit, and slavery is so widely accepted and beneficial to American lifestyle that it would have not been given up so lightly. The Constitution represents the American people as a whole, and if the majority of the people believe in an ideal that is not discussed in the Constitution, then clearly that ideal becomes an American institution.
As much as I hate saying this, gentlemen, I'm afraid I must go. I have to attend a nearby plantation. I cannot wait for our next meeting.
Yes, although we have our fair share of differences, I also do have the most wonderful debates with you both. See you both at our next meeting, where we will be discussing Harry Potter.
Yeah.